Hello and welcome back to or welcome to my channel. So this tutorial is going to be a little bit different than my normal crochet tutorials because instead of making something for us to wear, I am making something for a dog to wear. So I do not have a dog, but my lovely friend does, and she requested that I crochet a daisy bandana for her dog. So this is what it looks like. It is very cute, a very simple design, and you can make it in a couple different sizes depending on what size dog you want to make it for. I will put up here on the screen a picture of what this looks like when the dog is actually wearing it. You could also make it even bigger and you can make a little hair bandana for yourself like so. So it really is a very versatile design, very simple, very cute with these little daisies right in the center. So let's go ahead and jump into the tutorial for this crochet daisy dog bandana. For this tutorial, I am using weight 4 cotton yarn. You can use acrylic or any other kind of yarn. I just chose cotton because I thought it'd be the most comfortable in the summertime, but you can do any kind of yarn. So I'm using weight 4 cotton yarn, and I'm using the yellow for the center of the flower, the white for the petals, and the pink for the border. And then I will also be using a 5mm crochet hook. So let's go ahead and get started and make our very first daisy square. So we're going to start with the yellow yarn here, and I'm going to start by making a magic circle. So I'm starting off by just making a magic circle like so. I'm going to chain 1. And now into this magic circle, I'm going to place 8 single crochets. So we're doing 8 single crochets right into this magic circle. And then after completing all 8 of those single crochets, I'm just going to pull on the tail to tighten the circle. So now I have pulled on the tail and I have tightened all of the stitches together, so we're going to go ahead and close the circle. So I'm inserting my hook into the very first single crochet that we had placed. So this first stitch here, I'm inserting my hook into that stitch. I'm going to pick up some yarn, pull it through the stitch, and then also pull it through the loop on my hook, therefore completing a slip stitch. And we just brought that circle to a close, so we now have a perfect circle here. I'm then going to cast off, so I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to cut my yarn, and I leave a little bit of a tail when I cut my yarn so I can weave that in later. So now we have casted off with the center of the flower. I'm then going to pull my hook, pulling the yarn with it until the yarn just pops right through that chain stitch, and then I give it a little tug to lock it in place. So this is the center of our daisy, and now we're going to go ahead and get started on the petals. So I'm just going to pick any one of these 8 stitches around the circle. It doesn't matter which one, and I'm going to insert my hook into one of these stitches like so, and then I'm going to get my white yarn, and I'm going to pick up my white yarn and pull it right through that stitch. I'm then going to go ahead and chain 3. So here's 1, 2, and 3. And this chain 3 acts as our first double crochet. So for the first petal of this flower, we're only going to do 3 more double crochets, even though normally we would do 4, but because we have this chain 3, we're only going to do 3. And we're going to do these double crochets connected. So we're doing 3 connected double crochets. So the way you do that is you're going to first yarn over, insert your hook into the exact same stitch we had casted on from. So the same stitch we have that chain coming out of. I'm inserting my hook, picking up some yarn, and pulling it through the stitch. So now we have 3 loops here on our hook. So I'm going to pick up some yarn and pull through the first 2 loops. And now if you were doing a normal double crochet, you would then pick up some yarn and pull through the last 2 loops. But because we're doing a connected double crochet, I'm going to leave these 2 loops on my hook, and instead I'm going to yarn over and then insert my hook right back into that same exact stitch here in the center, and then pick up some yarn and pull that through. So here's our second stitch. I'm then going to pick up some yarn and pull it through the first 2 loops. So now we have 3 loops here on our hook, and we're going to do this one more time. So leaving all 3 loops on my hook, I'm then going to yarn over. I'm going to insert my hook into that exact same stitch, pick up some yarn, and then I'm going to pick up some more yarn, pull through 2, and now we have 4 loops here on our hook, and now we're going to go ahead and close the petal because we've done the 3 double crochets that we need for this first petal. So I'm going to pick up some yarn and pull it through all 4 loops on my hook, therefore closing the petal like so. So that is our first petal completed, and now we're going to chain 2. So here's 1 and 2, and now for all the rest of the flower petals, we're going to be doing 4 connected double crochets. As I mentioned, that first one we did 1 less double crochet because we had the chain 3, but now for the rest of these petals, the next 7 petals, we're going to be doing 4 connected double crochets. So into this next stitch here, I'm going to yarn over, insert my hook into the next stitch, pick up some yarn and pull it through that stitch. And because we're doing connected double crochets, I'm going to yarn over, pull through 2, and then with these 2 loops still on my hook, I'm going to yarn over and then reinsert my hook into that exact same stitch. I'm then going to pick up some yarn. So now I have 4 loops on my hook, yarn over, pull through 2. So I have 3 loops on my hook, and leaving those 3 loops there, I'm then going to yarn over, insert into the exact same stitch, pick up some yarn, yarn over, pull through 2. So that was 3 stitches, and we need to do 4 stitches. So I'm going to yarn over again, insert my hook back into that same stitch, and then yarn over and pull through 2. So that was all 4 stitches, and you should have 5 loops here on your hook once you've completed all 4 of those stitches. So now at the very end, I'm going to yarn over and pull through all 5 of those loops, like so. So there's our second petal completed, and I'll do one more with you here. So we're going to chain 2, and we're going to complete another 4 connected double crochets. So yarn over, insert your hook into the next stitch, pick up some yarn, yarn over, pull through 2, and while you still have 2 loops on your hook, yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, pick up some yarn, yarn over and pull through 2, so there's 2 stitches done, yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, pick up some yarn, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, insert your hook into the same stitch, pick up some yarn, yarn over and pull through 2. So that's all 4 of those double crochets, and I now have 5 loops remaining on my hook. So I'm then going to pick up some yarn and pull it through all 5 loops like so, and then chain 2, and then repeat the process for the rest of the petals. So overall, you should have 8 petals going all the way around. You should have 1 petal for each stitch here around the center, and each petal is made up of 4 connected double crochets with a chain 2 in between each petal. So I'm going to go ahead and repeat this same process for the remaining stitches here for the flower. I have now completed all 8 petals all the way around the center here. So now after completing that last petal, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2. And then I'm going to insert my hook right into the first petal that we made, this one right here, and I'm going to slip stitch like so, bringing it together into one perfect circle. So here's the daisy completed, and now we're going to go ahead and add that pink border or whatever color you're using. So I'm going to cast off with this white, so I'm going to chain 1, and then I'm going to cut my yarn, and as always, I leave a little bit of a tail when I cut my yarn so I can weave it in later. And then I'm just going to take my hook and pull it until the yarn pops right through that chain 1 stitch and give it a little tug to lock it in place. So now anywhere around this flower here, you can just insert your hook under any one of those chain 2 sections connecting each petal. So I'm just going to go right under one of those chain 2 sections, and I'm then going to get the yarn for my border color, which I'm using this soft pink. And I'm just going to pull that yarn right through the chain 2 section, and we're going to go ahead and chain 5. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. So this acts as our first double crochet with an additional chain 2. So this is going to be sort of the first half of this corner that we're making. So to make the corner for the square, we start with that chain 5, and then I'm going to place 3 double crochets into that exact same section or chain 2 section here between the petals. So the same place that we cast it on from, I'm reinserting my hook, and I'm placing a double crochet. Just a normal one, we're not connecting them, they're just normal plain double crochets. So there's 1, here's 2, and 3 double crochets. So this is 1/2 of our corner completed, and we're going to come back and finish the other half once we reach the end of the row. So for now, we're just going to go ahead and move forward to the next section of the flower. So into the next section here, which is the next chain 2 section in between these 2 petals, I'm going to place 3 half double crochets. So to do a half double crochet, I yarn over, insert my hook under that chain 2 section in between the 2 flower petals, pick up some yarn, and now I'm going to yarn over and pull that yarn through all 3 loops on my hook at once, like so. So that's a half double crochet, and we're going to do 3 of those in this one section here. So here's 2 and 3 half double crochets, like so. And now we're going to go ahead and make our second corner for the square. So now into this next section here between these next 2 petals, I'm going to start with 3 double crochets all in the same exact section. So here's 1, 2, and 3 double crochets. And now we have to make the corner. So to make the corner, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2. And then we're going to place another 3 double crochets into the exact same section. So into the same section that we just placed 3 double crochets, I am reinserting my hook and placing another 3 double crochets. So there's 2 and 3, like so. So there's our first full corner completed. And now into this next section here between these next 2 petals, we're going to do another 3 half double crochets. So here's 1, 2, and 3 half double crochets. And now into this next section here, we're going to complete our next corner. So I'm inserting my hook in between these next 2 flower petals, and I'm going to place 3 double crochets. So here's 2 and 3, and then to make it a corner, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2. And then into that exact same section, I'm going to place another 3 double crochets to therefore make it a corner. So there's 2 and 3. And then into the next section here, between these next 2 petals, we're going to do 3 half double crochets. So here's 2 and 3. And then into this next section here, this is our last corner. I'm going to place 3 double crochets, 2 and 3 double crochets. So there's 3 double crochets, and then I'm going to chain 2 and then place another 3 double crochets into that exact same section. 2 and 3. And then now into this next section here, we're going to do 3 half double crochets. There's 1, 2, and 3. And now we have to finish this corner here that we started with that chain 5. So I'm going to reinsert my hook into that same section where we had started off from. And here I'm just going to place 2 double crochets because that chain 5 acts as 1 double crochet as well as a chain 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this chain 5 and I'm going to go 2 chains back from the top. So here you can see our first and our second chain, and I'm going to go right into the 3rd chain here, and then I'm going to slip stitch like so. So this chain here, the first 3 chains acts as a double crochet, and then these 2 chains acts as the chain 2 for the corner. Therefore we made a perfect corner like so. And so now here is our completed square. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off. So I'm going to chain 1 and then cut my yarn, again leaving a little bit of a tail like so. I am then going to pull my hook and give it a little tug to lock the yarn in place. And now this is what all of the completed daisy squares should end up looking like. So the number of squares that you need for this bandana is really just going to depend on the size of bandana you want to make and how big the dog is. So I'm making this for quite a small dog, therefore I only need 3 full squares like so. And then I'm going to go ahead and make some half squares or triangles to fill in the top here. But when you're deciding how many squares you need or how big you need the bandana to be, I do recommend that you start by getting a measurement of the circumference of the dog's neck, and then you can kind of cut that in half so you roughly know you want the bandana to be about half, maybe a little bit more than half of the number of inches that is the entire circumference of the neck. So I now have the 3 base squares here, and now to finish the bandana shape, I'm going to need 3 half squares or triangles to put along the top. So let's go ahead and make those triangles or half squares now. So now to make the triangle squares, we're going to basically do the exact same thing we did for the full daisy square, but just sort of cut it in half. So I'm going to start with a magic circle. And now into this magic circle, I'm going to place 6 single crochets. So instead of 8, we are doing 6 single crochets. And then after I've completed all 6 of those single crochets, I'm going to pull on the tail to tighten the magic circle like so. And instead of slip stitching into that first stitch and making a perfect circle, we want to leave this as sort of a semicircle because we want this end to be flat. So instead I'm just going to cast off right here. So without slip stitching, I'm just going to cast off. So I'm going to chain 1 and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail as always, like so. I'm then going to pull my hook till the yarn pops right through and then tug it to lock it in place. I'm now going to start over on the bottom right corner of this sort of semicircle. So I'm going to insert my hook into the first stitch on the bottom right corner, and then I'm going to get my white yarn for the petals, and I'm going to pull it right through that stitch, and then I'm going to chain 5. So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And now we're going to do our first flower petal into the next stitch. So I'm going to skip the stitch that we just casted on from and we did that chain 5 out of. I'm going into the next stitch where I'm going to do my 4 connected double crochets to make a flower petal. So here's 2, 3 and 4, like so. So there's our first petal completed, and now we want to make 4 petals. So I'm going to do another 3 petals into these next 3 stitches here. So I'm going to chain 2, and then I'm going to do another 3 of these 4 double crochets that are all connected to make up 3 more petals, so that way we have 4 petals in total. So now we should have 4 flower petals going all the way across with just 1 stitch left over at the very end here. So for this last stitch, I'm going to chain 5, 4 and 5. I'm then going to insert my hook into this last stitch, and I'm going to slip stitch. So I'm pulling that yarn through the stitch and then also through the loop on my hook, therefore slip stitching that chain 5 back down to that last stitch. So we should have sort of half a flower here. We start with a chain 5, we have 4 flower petals going all the way across, and then we end with another chain 5, which creates sort of a semicircle. So then I'm going to go ahead and cast off with this white yarn. So I'm going to chain 1 and then cut my yarn, leaving a little bit of a tail, like so. I am then going to pull that yarn until it pops through the stitch and give it a little tug to lock it in place. And now we're going to go ahead and add the border, which I'm going to use my pink yarn for. I'm going to insert my hook in between this chain 5 and the first petal. So right in between that section there, I'm going to insert my hook, and I'm going to get my pink yarn. I'm going to pull the pink yarn right through, and then I'm going to chain 3, which acts as our first double crochet. So we need 2 more double crochets, because in total I want 3 double crochets, but that chain 3 acts as our first double crochet. So I'm going to place 2 more double crochets into this exact same section between the chain 5 and the first petal. So here's 2 double crochets. So it should look like that. I'm then going to jump over to the next section here under the chain 2 between these 2 petals. I'm inserting my hook, and I'm going to place 3 half double crochets. So here's 1, 2, and 3 half double crochets, all right under that chain 2 section in between the 2 petals. And now we're going to go ahead and do the one and only corner that we need for this half square or triangle. So I'm going to jump over to the next section here in between these 2 flower petals, and into this section we're going to start by placing 3 double crochets. So here's 2 and 3, and then to create that corner I'm going to go ahead and chain 2, like so. And then I'm going to place another 3 double crochets into that exact same section. So here's 1, 2, and 3, which this creates the one and only corner that we need for this half square that we're making. So now into this next section here between these next 2 petals, I'm going to do another 3 half double crochets. So there's 1, 2, and 3. And then I'm going to insert my hook right in between this last petal and this chain 5 section. So right into this section here, I'm inserting my hook, and I'm going to place 3 double crochets into this section. So here's 2 and 3 double crochets. And then that is it for this sort of half square or triangle. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off. So I'm going to chain 1 and cut my yarn. And then I'm going to pull my hook until the yarn pops through that stitch, and then tug it to lock it in place. And so that is how you're going to make all the triangles or half squares that you need for the top of the bandana. So now I went ahead and made 3 of these triangles, which I can fill in right here at the top of the bandana to then create that perfect big triangle shape here. You can see all together we have one big triangle. And now this is completely up to personal preference, but I do recommend you steam or block the squares before we attach them. I'll show you for reference. This here is a unsteamed or unblocked square. Here, let me move all these out of the way. So this here is what it looks like before I steamed or blocked the square versus after. It's a subtle difference, but it does help to flatten the square and just gives it an overall cleaner look. So if you want a really crisp and clean bandana, I do recommend steaming or blocking the squares before you attach them together. But again, you really don't have to. So now that we have all the squares that we need, I'm going to rebuild my bandana shape here so we can go ahead and begin attaching them. And now we are going to go ahead and just attach all of these squares together. There are several different ways you can attach granny squares. If you have a preferred method, go ahead and use that one. I'm just going to show you the method that I like to do to attach these, but again, you can do this in really any way that you want to. So I'm going to start by attaching these 3 granny squares. So I'm going to just put a line of yarn sort of right along this line and then along this line here. So let me show you how I do this. I'm going to use pink yarn, the exact same color that I'm using for the base of each square, and I'm going to start with these 2 squares. So I'm going to attach all of these squares with the back loops only. So the way I do that is I'm going to start in the bottom or top right corner of this first square, and when you look at a stitch, you can see that at the top of the stitch it is made up of 2 strands of yarn. We've got the front and the back strand or loop of yarn. So I'm going to go right through those 2 strands of yarn, picking up just the back strand or the back loop, and I'm going from the top down into that back loop. And then I'm going to get my other granny square here, and this part's a little bit tricky because instead of going from the bottom up, we're also going to go from the top down. So I'm going to find my very first stitch of this granny square, and I'm going to make sure I go from the top down in between those 2 loops of yarn or 2 strands, picking up just the back strand. So we should have both of the back loops of each stitch here on the granny squares right on our hook, and we should have inserted our hook top down into both of those stitches. I'm then going to get my yarn, and I'm using the pink yarn, the exact same color that I used for the base of the squares. I'm going to just cast on, and I'm going to pull that yarn through both of these loops here on my hook, like so. And now we're going to move on to the next stitch. So I'm going to the next stitch here on the granny square, and I'm picking up just the back loop of the next stitch. And then again from the top down, I'm picking up the back loop of this stitch on the next granny square. So it should be the second stitch for both granny squares, and I'm going from the top down into the back loop as well. And now we're going to do a slip stitch. So I'm picking up the yarn and I'm just pulling it through all of the loops on my hook. And I'm keeping my tension very loose as I'm doing this. If your tension is too tight, then the squares are going to kind of bunch up and you don't want that. So keep your tension very loose. And now we're going into the third stitch of the granny square. From the top down, I'm inserting my hook into the back loop of that third stitch. And then for the other granny square here, also top down, inserting my hook into the back loop. I'm then picking up the yarn and slip stitching. So I'm pulling that yarn through all of the loops on my hook. And then again, going into the fourth stitch, I'm going from the top down into the back loop of the fourth stitch on this granny square, and then from the top down into the back loop on the other granny square, and I'm going to slip stitch through that stitch like so. And as you can see here, it's just creating a really nice, pretty stitch right in between the squares, and it's just securing them very nicely. I think the stitch just looks so pretty. So again, you can connect these squares however you want to, but I just really like the way this way looks. So I'm going to go ahead and complete the rest of this square here. So again, I'm just scooping up the back loop of the stitches on both sides and making sure I'm picking up the exact same stitch on both granny squares, so that way they're evenly secured together. And I'm also going to keep my tension very loose, and I'm going to continue just working my way down this row here, attaching both sides of the granny squares together. So I have now done that connecting slip stitch all the way down both sides of this granny square to attach these 2 granny squares together. And now I want to go ahead and attach the other square. So I'm going to bring the other square in here, and I'm going to repeat that same process, only now I'm going to attach this side and this side together. So still working into just the back loop on both sides, and I'm not going to cast off. I'm just going to keep working with this same strand of yarn. I'm just going to go ahead and complete that same slip stitch all the way down this row here, attaching this side and this side of the granny squares together. I have now worked all the way down this side as well with the slip stitch, and you can see it's just such a pretty stitch attaching all 3 granny squares together. So I'm going to go ahead and cast off here. So I'm going to chain 1 and then cut my yarn like so, and then I just pull my hook and give the yarn a little tug. So those are our 3 main granny squares now attached, and now we just need to go ahead and add in the triangles or the half squares. So these are going to go right along the top like so. So there's 1 in each of these sort of missing holes here to create the perfect triangle. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some more pink yarn, I'm going to cast back on, and I'm going to follow this exact same method that I demonstrated with securing the granny squares, only I'm going to start from this side, and I'm going to do this stitch all the way across, and then down, and then up, and across, therefore securing this entire sort of line here and attaching all 3 of these triangles or half granny squares to the 3 main granny squares here. So just doing this exact same sort of slip stitch or joining stitch that I had demonstrated, I'm going to go all the way along this line here, therefore attaching all of the granny squares together. So I'm going to go ahead and do that, and then I'll see you back here once I am done with that. I have now gone ahead and done that slip stitch all the way across there, so all these squares are now perfectly attached, and we have a lot of loose ends, which if you want to, you can weave those in now, but I like to save all the loose ends for my project until I'm completely done, so I'm just going to kind of work around them. But what we're going to do now is we're going to go ahead and add sort of a shell or a lace border along the bottom here of the triangle. I'm not going to put it across the top, we're going to do something different at the top, but along the bottom here, we're going to add a really nice little lace border. So I'm going to go ahead and make this border out of my white yarn. And so I'm going up here to the top corner of our triangle, and I'm going to insert my hook right into that first stitch there at the top corner. And I'm just going to pull that yarn right through that stitch and then chain 1 to lock it in place. And now I'm going to go ahead and skip this next stitch here, but into the stitch right after it. So I'm skipping the next stitch and into the stitch after it. I'm going to insert my hook, and now into this stitch here, we are going to place 6 double crochets. If you want a bigger sort of puff or shell stitch here, you can do more than 6, but I have found that 6 technically looks best here with this project. So there's 3, 4, and I'm placing all 6 of these double crochets into the exact same stitch, which is going to give us that sort of lace or shell look. So I believe that is 6. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Perfect. So after doing all 6 double crochets, I'm then going to skip the next stitch here, and into the stitch right after it, I'm going to insert my hook and slip stitch. And that's just going to bring those double crochets back down flush to the project, which gives us this really pretty sort of semicircle there against the edge of our bandana. So now we're going to go ahead and create another one. So again, I'm going to skip the next stitch here. I'm skipping that one and going into the stitch right after it. And into this stitch, I'm going to do another 6 double crochets. So we're just going to be placing 6 double crochets all into the exact same stitch. There's 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then again, I'm going to go ahead and skip the next stitch, and into the stitch right after that one, I'm going to insert my hook and slip stitch, which brings all those double crochets back down flush to the project and gives us another really pretty semicircle there. So let's do one more here. So I'm going to go ahead and skip the next stitch, and when I get to this seam here where we attach the 2 granny squares, I count that seam as a stitch. So right here where we did that attachment, I count that as a stitch. So I'm skipping that and I'm going over right into the next stitch here, and into this stitch we're going to go ahead and place another 6 double crochets all into the same exact stitch. There's 2, 3, here's 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to skip the stitch right after that one, and into the next stitch place a slip stitch. And then after that, we're going to skip the stitch right after it, and then into the next stitch, place another 6 double crochets. And you're just going to repeat that same process of slip stitch, skip a stitch, 6 double crochets, skip a stitch, slip stitch, skip a stitch, 6 double crochets. So just like I just demonstrated to make these little shell shapes here, you're going to go ahead and repeat that same process all the way from this corner, all the way down, around the bottom here, and back up until you reach this corner. So we're just going to place these all the way along the bottom of the triangle or the bandana here. I have now completed that shell stitch all the way along the border here, so I'm going to go ahead and cast off at the very end. So I already chained 1, and then I'm going to cut my yarn like so, and then pull the yarn through and give it a tug to lock it in place. So now we're going to go ahead and make the string so you can actually tie the bandana around the dog's neck. So we're going to start by making the string on one side, attach it to the top, work across the top, and then make the string on the other side. So to make this kind of string, you're going to need 2 strands of yarn at the same time. I am working with both the white and the pink yarn here. So using my hook, I'm going to go ahead and start with a slip knot. like so. And now we're going to separate the yarn between the top and the bottom strands. I'm going to have the white yarn be the top and the pink yarn is going to be the bottom. So I'm holding my white yarn as I normally hold yarn to crochet, and then I'm pinching the bottom or the pink yarn in between my thumb and my last 3 fingers. So now what we're going to do is we're basically making a crochet stitch or a chain stitch, only each step of this stitch is done with an individual strand of yarn. So I'm going to start with the bottom yarn or the pink yarn, and I'm going to wrap it over my hook like so. And then using my hook, I'm going to scoop up the white yarn and I'm going to slip stitch. So I'm going to pull the white yarn through the pink yarn and through the slip knot that's on my hook. And then we're going to repeat that. So I'm going back to the pink yarn or the bottom yarn and I'm wrapping it over my hook. And then I'm picking up the white yarn and pulling it through both loops there on my hook. So we're basically just doing a crochet stitch, but each step of the stitch is done with an individual strand of yarn. So again, I'm taking the bottom strand or the pink yarn, wrapping it over my hook, and then I'm going to take the white yarn and pull it through both loops on my hook. And this just creates a really nice multicolor, durable string. If you want to be in one color, you can just use 2 strands of the same color. But as you can see here, we have a pink and white little 2-tone string going on. And this works up very quickly, so I'm just going to go ahead and repeat this same process of taking my pink yarn, wrapping it over the hook, taking the white yarn, and pulling it through both loops. Okay, so here I have the string, and I ended up going for more like 10 inches in length. I figured if it's too long, we can always just knot it and cut it, and I would rather be on the longer side than make it too short. So I definitely went a couple inches beyond because we can always just tie a knot and make it shorter very easily. So now that I have made one string or one side of the tie, I'm going to bring my bandana back, and now we're going to attach it. So I'm going to attach it to the top right corner here. So this very top right stitch, I'm inserting my hook, and now I'm going to be crocheting with both strands of yarn, both the pink and the white yarn. So I'm picking up both the pink and the white yarn, and I'm going to slip stitch like so, therefore securing the tie right to the corner of the bandana. And now I'm just going to place single crochets into all of these stitches. It can be kind of hard to tell where each stitch takes place because we're working along the top here, and the top is a little bit funky with the way we have these half granny squares here. So just take your time and kind of figure out where you want each stitch to go. I am working with both the white and the pink yarn at the same time. I'm working with them doubled up, and I'm just placing single crochet stitches all the way across the top here, all the way over to the other corner. And the nice thing about crochet is it is quite forgiving, so if you accidentally miss a stitch or you place too many stitches in one spot, it's not going to mess up your entire project, so I wouldn't be too worried about it. And just wherever you think you need to place a single crochet along this row, right under all these chain sections here, I would just go ahead and place some single crochets, until you work your way all the way across. So I'm really just looking for any one of these chain sections or what looks like it could be a stitch, and I'm inserting my hook and placing a single crochet as I work my way all the way across the top of the bandana here. I have now worked my way all the way across here with this row of single crochets, and I'm just going to place one last stitch into the very first white stitch here of the shell, like so. And now we're going to go ahead and we're going to make the other string, which I'm going to make the same length as the first string. So I'm going to separate my yarn again. So I'm going to separate it the same way I had it before, where the white is on top and the pink is on the bottom. And I'm going to wrap the pink over my hook, pick up the white, and then pull it through all of the loops on my hook. And then again, wrap the pink, pick up the white, pull it through all the loops. And I'm just going to repeat this all the way until I have reached the length of the other string. So this string, I'm going to measure it and I'm going to make sure I reach about that 10-inch length, so it is even with the string that we have on the other side of the bandana here. And now after completing that second string, I'm just going to chain one with both strands of yarn, and then I'm going to cut my yarn. And I didn't leave too long of a tail this time because I'm not weaving in the ends for the strings. So now the bandana is technically completed. All we have left to do is weave in all of these loose ends. And for the strings on both sides, instead of weaving in the loose ends, because it can be tricky to weave in a loose end into a little tiny string like this, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie a knot at the end. So I'm just tying a simple knot here, and I'm pulling it tight, and I'm making sure I'm pulling it very, very tight so it does not come undone, like so. And then after I've pulled that knot quite tight, I am then just going to cut the actual crochet below the knot like so. So that's what I'm going to do on both sides for the tie string, but otherwise I'm just going to weave in all the loose ends for the bandana itself. I really hope that you liked this tutorial and that you found it easy enough to follow. If you want to share with me your finished design, I would love to see it. You can do so by either tagging me in a picture that you post or just send me a picture to my Instagram DMs. I will put my social media right here if you want to follow me or just send me a picture of your finished product. I'm very excited to see that. Otherwise, if you have any questions, feel free to leave those in the comments down below, or if you have any requests, comments, anything like that, I try to get back to all the comments. If you haven't already, then please consider subscribing. Typically, I do crochet tutorials for wearables for humans, but you never know. So if you're interested in crochet, I try to post twice a week here, so consider subscribing. Like this video if you did like it. Thank you so much in advance. Otherwise, I will see you again for another video very soon. So I hope you have a blessed and wonderful couple of days until I see you again. Goodbye.